Hi there, and thank you for joining this episode of Where Media Lives. Where Media Lives is an AWS video podcast focused on the media and entertainment industry. Today, we're at reInvent, where we are sharing with customers our customer stories and our customer stories about how they are reinventing the business of media and entertainment. And I could not be more excited to share with you the guest that we have today. I'm here with Ron Ames, who is the producer of The Lord of the Rings of Power, as well as Jesse Kobayashi, who is the VFX producer of the same show, and Wayron Henricks, who is their partner and the SVP of product at Company 3. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. We're so excited to have you here. Now, I know that you were here earlier speaking on stage today about this really exciting transformation that you've done about how you're producing the show in the cloud. Can you tell me a little bit about this use case?
Sure. So when we started production in 2019, we started in our office in Los Angeles. The showrunners were writing the story, and we were down the hall figuring out how we were going to do it. And each day we would get new scripts and new outlines, and we would read it, and our jaws would drop in terms of the largeness of the show, the largeness of the scope, and the technical challenge of actually producing this in the time that we had. So we knew that we were going to need new tools. And one of the tools that we determined we were going to do was to do production totally cloud-based. So we would use spinning disks where required, but everything would be moved to the cloud.
And that was inventive, though. Like, not a lot of people at that time were doing fully cloud-based production, right?
No one had done it literally before. Yeah. And so we asked Amazon Prime and AWS if we could be the first, and would they support us and give us all the space that we needed to test this all out. And they looked at us for a moment and said, sure. So we began.
Okay, well, I want to talk about that journey then. So virtual effects is a really important element to the show, as we've all seen. So tell me about that. When you think about, certainly there are latency issues that you want to think about. You're trying to communicate all over the world. Tell me a little bit about how did you start to test and validate what was possible?
I think when you're doing 9,164 VFX shots, which we didn't know at the time, but we knew it was going to be 8 episodes. And to Ron's point, when he brought me on, he had already made that deal with Amazon, so I got to be the benefactory of kind of that technology being available to us. And so I think the thing you have to figure out is, to that point, when you're scaling to that much work with a worldwide set of studios, and you add something like the pandemic, which creates now a new hybridized workforce, you've got to find new ways to communicate between. And so using AWS and some of the tools we built internally at the show level, some tools with Amazon, some tools with Company 3, some tools just kind of homegrown, we're able to automate a lot of functionality that you couldn't, that you normally would do manually, which just you don't have the time to do when you're dealing with a show of this size and scope.
Right. But how did you get everybody comfortable with that? What are the first steps when you go to test out these sorts of technical capabilities at such a grand scale? You obviously can't start in full. What are those steps that you took?
So one of the things that was really going for us, that Lord of the Rings is a title that is beloved by both fans and also technicians. People wanted to come back to Middle Earth. So when we started to set this up, everybody was willing to listen to the idea, and then together we discovered the challenges, bumps, and all the things that we needed to figure out with our teams, and everyone was willing to do it, both on a vendor level and also crew and team levels. It was new, and what you're really pointing to is the cultural shifts that need to occur when you bring new technology to storytelling. Storytelling is ancient. How we now do it actually supports creativity. It's not about technology for technology's sake. It literally is about how we can make storytelling, drama, the truth of human relations more evident and clear. And so we reached out to people like Wayron. Wayron can talk about this, but we said, Wayron, will you help us? We're going to have hundreds, thousands of hours of dailies. All of it need to be put in the cloud. Can you help us build systems?
Well, Wayron, let's talk about that.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out is Ron mentioned the magnitude of this show is massive, and it's a global endeavor.
Yeah.
So the process where Company 3's Synapse and Cloud Studio come in is basically ingesting all that metadata from all the content that they're shooting on a daily basis. And the metadata, along with all the other vectors of information that comes in, is used to process the VFX plates that then go to vendors around the world. So the editorial team from Ron's team will basically send a request saying that these 50 shots need to go to ILM, to double negative,
Right,
and
okay.
so on and so forth. And the system will automatically find the raw files, process them, and deliver them to the buckets of these visual effects.
And what does that kind of time frame, turnaround time, look like?
So the time is less than half a day.
Okay.
Depending upon how many frames are in the.
But that's surprising at the volumes that you're talking
Yes,
about.
And one of the remarkable things is that all this information is in buckets that's readily available, not only for the processing, but also for the future vendors that Ron and his team would bring in. We didn't have to reprocess anything because it's all sitting out there, and we could just give them links to the old content. We could get that.
And this used to all be manual. That's the thing.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
When you say half a day, that scales up when you're talking about the 9,000 shots, the thousands of hours of camera dailies. That used to be a manual process of an EDL submission and a coordinator, multiple stations downloading to local storage, uploading, and all that time. Now we're talking
Well, what did you save then? What do you think that would, if you had to estimate time saved?
I don't even know how to quantify the value of it.
I would say that we wouldn't have succeeded
Yeah.
if it wasn't. When we did the
Okay.
analytics, there aren't enough hours in the day to actually look at, process, and share all of this data.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do it in this kind of a way.
Okay.
Because it's industrial strength.
Yeah.
But while industrial strength, it still is respecting the artist and bringing collaboration and artists together from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have people in Singapore and London, in India,
Yeah.
in all over, and all connected and all working together in a collaborative manner.
Well, and you highlight a good point, because one of the things that I've heard is a benefit of this is then you can take advantage of great talent all over the world, right? You don't have to have them all in LA or New Zealand or wherever you might have normally have had them. Tell me a little bit about the benefits there and how you utilize
so,
those.
So you couldn't scale. If we were in New Zealand and we hired every visual effects artist there, that still wouldn't have been enough. And they all, many of them already had jobs. So we had to scale. It's the only way to do it. And now in the internationalization of film production requires it, both for financial reasons and creative reasons. So you are now getting the cream of the crop all over the world joining together. And on a title like Lord of the Rings, it was easy to recruit. People
Yeah.
were willing to join.
So this didn't happen overnight. I'm curious how long this evolution took for you to sort of get this stood up, tested, proven, and then move into production. What would that have looked like for you?
Well, I'll start by saying, with a lot of this stuff with technology, you kind of build the airplane while you're flying.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that would be a very similar analogy to our production. I'd even go as far to say that we never finished. We continued to want to push and grow and push and grow. And I think we set milestones. Or we're always, using a technology term, MVPs of
Yeah.
what we needed to accomplish for certain tasks, whether it was VFX pools or color in the cloud or sharing files between vendors. So I don't know if the process ever really ended.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
it really was continually growing. And Ron brought up a good point in the conversation we had recently, which is as we're trying to get people to get on board, some of those folks were bringing old school mentalities to it, but they were open to experimenting. And in that, we found new ways to improve what we originally maybe thought was just a small portion of
Okay.
what they began to grow into a much bigger and bigger idea. So I think
Oh, I
to say
love
that
that.
we
Yeah,
continue to grow
it's
with
sort
this.
of culturally changing that mind shift so that people
Yeah.
recognize I'm in a new tool set, I can do new things, and then the artist in them gets inspired by what I hope, right, to be able to work and do things in new ways. Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I would also say that we didn't really know what we were doing. We brought a beginner's mind to it. So to say, what would be the most important thing, we didn't really know. But as we started to build it, we started to learn. And that was really the joy in it, was figuring it out and doing so in a collaborative manner.
Yeah, well, we love that. And when you're pushing the envelope like that, you're sometimes on the bleeding edge, so not everything goes according to plan, right? So tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you had to overcome as you were shifting into the cloud.
I'd say that one of them probably, like you said, is the adoption from a vendor standpoint. A lot of vendors have proprietary methods that they use to share files, and so part of it was onboarding vendors into that world, and sometimes there were hiccups getting them connected or using the tools the way that I think they were intended to be used. But ultimately, whenever we showed them, guys, if you embrace this part of the technology, this part of the connectivity, then here are the gains you're going to be able to see. That turnaround that used to maybe take 2 days now is half a day. So that was part of it, is getting through some of the older or more kind of, I guess, traditional is a great word, mentality approach to things. And we were talking a little bit just outside about the QC process too. You could probably speak, Ray, on to the lessons we learned in rendering the new methods from the cloud.
Yeah, so there were challenges along the way, and the tools available in AWS helped us resolve those in quite a timely manner. In terms of the QC, there were issues that we were pushing the envelope. I'm stealing from you. You said that point earlier. And when we have that kind of throughput required from S3 buckets, there were issues that we were pushing that whole construct to the limit. One of the advantages that I should point out, there's several of them, in terms of dealing with these changes as they came along. We have most of our infrastructure written as code, so we don't need to actually physically bring a machine. It's just changing the code to accommodate for any new changes. So if you wanted more machines, we would auto-scale them. If we wanted more storage, we would scale it. We could interconnect two regions very easily. So those were powerful tools that helped us sustain the rigor that Ron and his team demanded out of the whole show.
Okay,
There's another thing to point it out, which is filmmaking is a messy, dynamic methodology of creating art. So, I mean, really, we were shooting at night or in the morning or in the cold, and it's like these tools were tools that actually helped us get through the day faster, sharing communications more handily and readily. We had at some point 3 sets of crews shooting all over, and we could be communicating between all of those, sharing editorial functions and all kinds of other ways of working that everybody. The thing that always blows my mind is you introduce this, it's brand new, and then it's the next day, it's as if it's always been there. People start using it like, yes, people just
intuitive then.
Yes, it's intuitive, and on top of it, it's like, yeah, we've always done, you show up and you can see virtual production, see your shot comped on the wall in real time. It's like, no, that's never actually happened before, but everybody just gets used to it.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of efficiencies that maybe often don't get relayed, right? When we're telling these use cases, we think about, oh, you use, less storage, or you can scale compute sessions as you need them, but you don't think about the other workflow efficiencies that come from a production like that. So that's really exciting to hear.
Yes, with people actually on the ground doing it, making art. It's like we talk about it almost as if it was theoretical. It actually isn't. And there's cost savings, there's efficiency, and when you're making art, it's about performance. So you're actually being able to capture the performance in its most raw state, in its most immediate state, and that is better for everyone.
That is fantastic. And what a great customer story for reInvent, where we really want to inspire others to follow your lead and to test the art of the possible. So that's been great. Wayron, I think you had more you were going to share.
Comment on the finishing stage of this. There's different parts of the production, post-production pipeline. In the finishing stage, we had our cloud studio, basically, where the color correction would actually was done by a colorist in Idaho, whereas the content was sitting in US West buckets, and the conform was in LA. support. There's just one person supporting this entire thing.
Wow.
Engineer-wise. And then Ron and his team were in Auckland. And then we had executives in London all collaborating live with high-quality content.
That's incredible.
AWS backbone.
With no files locally stored, all stored in a unique S3 bucket.
That's amazing.
There's one other thing I wanted to go back to when you were asking the question. So we had started this idea that we were going to be the first production to be largely cloud-based. So we started shooting in September of 2019, and in March we were shut down with COVID.
Oh, yeah.
So we were building our system in those first months. When we were shut down, the thing that was so amazing was the studio and the rules said we needed to stop. And we said, well, we can't stop because we've scaled up. We have people working all around the world. We must continue.
Yeah.
It took us literally a weekend to put together hardware, send it home with our teams, and it was literally over a weekend. And by Monday, the editorial, visual effects, art department, and a number of the creative teams that were still designing and working could continue. Our director was there, our producers were there, so we never stopped.
All from home.
All working from home.
All from home. That is
And
amazing.
so
They'll
that-
never go back to the office again, I'm pretty sure.
So the thing is, sometimes it's really important to work together and to see things on a common screen and
Yeah.
and hear music and how people react to performance is group. But at the same time, the pandemic, which was such a horrible thing, caused us to look at filmmaking in new ways.
Yeah.
And allow for possibilities that might have taken years to be actually integrated. But over a weekend, everybody was
That
working
is
from home.
amazing, and a tribute to the flexibility of the cloud, I think. You highlight something that's very important, and we saw a lot of this content production changes, of course, accelerated because of the pandemic. So many productions were shut down, whether they were live or other film productions. And we sort of wondered, as things relaxed, would we continue to see that pace continue? But I feel that we have, because of the benefits that productions have seen that spun out of that necessity. We continue to see productions move and push the envelope, and I think in the ways that you've expressed, have seen some of those same sorts of inspirations, like, hey, this has been great. Is there more we can do? What more? What is next? So I guess I would, before we leave today, I would be curious, what do you think is next in the frontier of technology for you as you continue this massive scaled production?
So, in my opinion, and having worked on productions that are unique, when I worked on Avatar, the next film I did was Real Steel, and the question was, could we take an Avatar methodology and bring it to a smaller production? And the answer was yes, we did. We ported it, and it was super successful. Likewise, I believe that is what our next step is, to take these tools and culturally integrate them into filmmaking, because people tend to use the tools that they know how to use.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's hard to get people to, wait a second, try something better.
To go backward, yeah.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
in fact, that is the task.
Okay, well, gentlemen, it has been my pleasure. I know everyone's going to be excited to learn all about this inspiring story. So I thank you for joining us today. And thank you all for tuning in to Where Media Lives. We'll see you next time.